All right, Joel, we have to transition to your role as commissioner here because, first of all, everybody needs to listen to Joel's Monday episode. And if you're not subscribed to the Joel Klatt Show, what are you even doing? Do you even care about college football?
Very good, Joel.
But this was fantastic because you are throwing out ideas for what the new playoff, what the evolved playoff might look like. And I encourage everybody to listen because it's more of a holistic plan for the sport. Because you talk about talent acquisition periods and moving the transfer portal window and all that. But the playoff thing was what got Ari and I texting each other angrily this afternoon. So that's where we're going to start. Because you have now the idea is to go to 14, which is something that I think the Big Ten and the SEC have mentioned they'd like. But this is something I know the Big Ten has said you would kind of slot spots for each league. So 4 for the Big Ten, 4 for the SEC, 2 for the ACC, 2 for the Big 12. And then you have a group of 5 bid and an at-large spot that Notre Dame could slide into. But I want you to explain how you'd handle the subjectivity portion because you want to take that out.
I do.
And create a championship weekend.
I think that there will still be subjectivity, but
right, because you got to seed them
after firm criteria is established.
Yeah.
So yeah. So you want me to go through like what I would do for qualification?
That championship weekend thing sounds incredible.
Okay, so first of all, you arrive at 14 for a number of different factors, which we could take a long time to discuss. So like, let's get past that and just assume that this is the model. Okay. Rather than argue, well, like, why do they get 4 and why do they get 2? Let's just assume that this is the model to get to this championship game weekend. Mm-hmm. If you have 4 auto bids in the Big Ten and the SEC, then what you can have, and 2 autos in the ACC and the Big 12, then on championship game weekend, you don't have singular championship games. What you would have in the Big Ten and the SEC is your championship game. So you can crown a champion, and then that champion would get one of the top 2 seeds in the bye. The loser of that game still goes to the playoff because they qualified for the championship game. But then you've got to slot 2 other teams per league into your automatic qualifying spots. And rather than just do it by the seeding, why not create more inventory? And so what you would do is you would play 3 versus 6 and 4 versus 5 from the standings during the course of the year. And those would be played at home. So for instance, this is the conference standings that you're looking at for the SEC. So Texas and Georgia played for the SEC championship game. And then Tennessee would host Missouri and Alabama would host Ole Miss. The winner of those games go. And good luck. And in the Big Ten, this is what it would look like. Oregon would have played Penn State in the conference championship game. And then Indiana hosts Iowa and Ohio State hosts Illinois. And the winners of those games go. And now, all of a sudden, what you have is in the whole month of November, it's not just about getting yourself into the playoff, but in those conferences, and I'll explain the other 2 as well, but in those conferences, it's about let's just get into the top 6. Let's get into our own little playoff here, our play-in games on championship game weekend, because then we've got a shot. So now, in my mind, you're increasing the depth and the number of teams that feel like they have a chance, fan bases that feel like they have a chance within conferences. And then what I would do in the ACC and the Big 12, since I'm removing them from possibility of getting one of the top 2 seeds and a bye, then their championship game becomes unnecessary, and their championship games can become 2 games, 1 versus 4 and 2 versus 3 for the right to go and qualify for their automatic spots. Now, they could do this if they want. They don't have to do this if they want, but it would be SMU hosting Duke and Clemson hosting Miami, and good luck, and here we go. In the Big 12, it would be Iowa State hosting Arizona State hosting Colorado and Iowa State hosting BYU, and winner goes to the playoff. And again, you have more teams. So now you've got Baylor and TCU and all these different teams that feel like they've got a chance late in the season to get themselves into the playoff mode. And what you would have is, at least in the last week, 22 teams that feel like they are playing with the right to go to the playoff or earn a bye. And to me, that would just expand what is already valuable, the inventory late in the year. And I really like that idea. That's probably my favorite one.
Ari's text to me as he's listening to the show is, what about excellence? The sixth place team has no business. And I'm like, what was the sixth place team?
No. That's not what I said.
Okay.
It's
I'm
kind
putting
of like
words in your
that.
mouth.
It's kind of like that. But the thing that I think is interesting is, and Joel, I was on my way to the dentist today and I listened to the first 35 minutes. I've got the last 25 when I go pick up my daughter from school today. So forgive me but I don't know. And maybe this is just because of the era of college football that I grew up in, which was 2000 to now, right? That's like when my brain was forming and when I got into the business and when I loved the sport as a kid. How you can simultaneously say we want to emphasize the regular season while also basically inviting 40% of the sport to participate in a 22 team tournament. Because that's all it is, right? Like even if you want to call it Big Ten play-ins and ACC, it's a 22 team playoff at that point. And if you have the sixth best team in the Big Ten alive in that, then you're diminishing the regular season. Is that a fair thing to say? Like, I don't know.
That's just mean to Iowa, Ari.
No, but it's like if Iowa is in, then like losing doesn't matter. Like most of the time, especially for the big teams that are going to be there every year. Because like, what would have to happen for Bama to finish seventh in their conference?
But it would have given, but that would have given Indiana another hard game to get in, or a hard game to get in where they didn't have a lot.
I'm not saying it wouldn't be awesome and that it wouldn't be fun to watch, but I don't think that you can say we're preserving the sanctity of the regular season with the system.
Sure,
those are two different things.
And I think I don't know. Listen, I hear that. I really do. I think that the direction that things are going, that argument might be a little bit of toothpaste out of the tube when we're going to have a champion that either lost to Michigan, who was a 5-loss team, or a champion that lost to Northern Illinois, both on their home field. So does that make sense? So
yeah, it does. It
kind
does.
of in there already. What I despised, let me just tell you what I absolutely despised, was the first time we got an expanded playoff in our sport and the first time we've ever seen meaningful playoff games on campuses and how incredible that was and those environments were. And we had negative, divisive commentary regarding who was included. And I thought to myself, this is crazy. And what's the difference between the first round of the college football playoffs and the wild card round in the NFL as far as competitiveness? Nothing. There are blowouts in every one of those. There's nothing. And yet we don't hear that, these teams don't deserve to be in the NFL playoffs. And the reason is because there's a defined path. So what I was trying to map out is a way to remove that subjective nature of inclusion and define the path, and then we can get right back and dive in. Once we have our teams who have earned their way there on the field, now we can dive back in and be like, all right, where are they seated? And now we can debate and who's got home games, and here we go. So
I also like that you got the second round at home. You got the second round on campus.
Second round on campus. We're requiring, and that one's more of a protection for the fan. As much as I loved the games on campus. Yeah, that was great. We can't require fan bases to go to this many neutral sites. That's crazy. We're going to tax them out of the sport, and that's not what we're trying to do.
We'll be right back with more from Joel Klatt. But first, I want to tell you about PrizePicks, the best daily fantasy game in America. Use the code STAPLES when you sign up. Play $5, get $50 instantly. And right now, with the national championship game coming up, the Will Howard square, that's Will Howard, the Ohio State quarterback, 0.5 yards more than. That is essentially a free square. How PrizePicks works, you pick squares, at least 2. The more you pick, the higher the potential payout. If you pick Will Howard and he throws for a yard, you'll win that square. So you're halfway home if you're doing a 2-square play. So thank Will Howard. Thanks, PrizePicks. That's one to watch. Another one to watch, we were talking about Jeremiah Love on the show the other day. I think Jeremiah Love is due for a big game. I think you kind of have to have a big game if you call out Ohio State and say, we want the Buckeyes. We think Ohio State's better than Texas. We want to play them in the national title game. So will Jeremiah Love go more than his total or less than his total if you're confident in Ohio State's defense? It's a very good question, but we'll find out when that game gets played. And obviously, PrizePicks, not just college football. They've got the NFL, the NBA, college basketball, the NHL, darts, esports, you name it. If it's competition, they got it on PrizePicks. So download the app, use the code STAPLES when you sign up, play $5, get $50 instantly. Back to Joel Klatt.
Yeah, you know what I think is really interesting about this is that, like, when you get to the end of the road in your system, and I do feel like in this system we have a pure champion, right? Like this year, even to the certain extent of like who should get in and who should get out, like this produced teams that had to win along the way. But the thing that I will say, and this is just a pure preference thing for me, is that like and maybe this is just the podcaster talking in me, I love the unhinged discourse. Like I love arguing with people about who should be in and who should be out. I love the excitement that you get when the playoff committee reveals their rankings every Tuesday. And like, I know that this is probably more functional and healthy, where there's just, guidelines and you have to, win X number of games to get in. There's no debate whatsoever. It's the NFL. I get it.
I actually think, or you're being
insanity.
You are embracing college football's history, because college football's history is a history of debate rather than a clear path. So, but and
like you always say this to me,
it's kind of
Andy,
like a dance. Like, haven't we danced around this forever? It's like this is the ratio that we've danced around forever. Well, we don't like just several polls crowning a national champion. So we want to take some of the subjectivity out of it. So let's create the Bowl Alliance. All right, let's take a little more subjectivity out of it and create the BCS. All right, now let's take a little more subjectivity out of it and create a 4-team playoff. And so like that's all we're doing. And this is going one direction. This is going one direction.
Yeah.
But again, I know you loved all the discourse. I didn't think it was healthy for the sport when it rose to the level that it did. And it was overtaking the entire first round. I don't think that was good.
The argument about should Alabama have been in, which thank God Michigan did what it did in the ReliaQuest Bowl, because it made that a lot easier. But it was.
Well, it drove me insane too. I mean,
and people are so nasty about it. Is the part I didn't like. Like it's college football. It's important, but we don't need to be calling each other some of these things.
Well, and not only that, but I thought that there was too much negativity placed squarely on the shoulders of Indiana.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If
Indiana
I'm a player,
didn't make its schedule.
If I'm a player that only lost to Ohio State and Notre Dame, now I'm sitting there and I'm like, they're playing for the national championship. Like what?
Yeah.
So I always put myself in the player's mode. If I'm Curtis Rourke, I'd be pissed.
Well, and Joel, we talked about this on our show, because they didn't have any responsibility for their conference schedule. And their non-conference, but if we just told you before the season, Indiana had to play both teams that played for the national title last year and Ohio State, and they went 11-1. You're like, oh God, no brainer.
Yeah, no brainer. I think that's exactly right. And that actually speaks more to some fixes that I think that we need in scheduling outside of the playoff. I think we need to increase the number of Power 4 games that everybody plays. And count them towards, the status of your standings within your conference. I think everybody should play the same number of games. And I also firmly believe that we need to take scheduling out of the hands of athletic directors. So tired of athletic directors scheduling.
Well, that's when you're the commissioner, you're going to have a person, and it's probably that guy at Michigan State who does everybody's non-conference scheduling. But you're going to have a person who does that when you're the commissioner. But like the SEC thing, it's crazy to me because 4 years ago, the SEC ADs were on board with 9 conference games because they wanted to sell more tickets. Like I knew eventually it was going to become a business thing. And it was like their fans got sick of bad games. And so they're like, yeah, let's add another conference game. But then ESPN does the deal with them, and then NBC and CBS do their deals with the Big Ten, and the SEC schools are, whoa. We're going to need some more money if we're going to do this 9th conference game. So, hopefully the mouse will start writing some checks and you can get that 9th conference game.
I do think that they're going to go to 9. I think that they need to, just to balance out their schedule. You look at the lopsided nature of some of the schedules, like the schedule that Missouri played versus Florida played was wildly different. Oklahoma, the same thing. So I mean, those are things that I think will come to pass eventually. And I also believe that we should schedule on a road, what I would say, an annual basis based on where teams finish. I think both within conferences, like we have huge conferences, 16, 18 teams. We should pod teams within the conferences, and not just to like maintain rivalries and everything. Yeah, you can maintain rivalries, but you should put aside a couple of games where if you're finishing in the top end of the conference, you play top end conference teams. And if you're finishing in the bottom end of the conference, you play bottom end of the conference teams.
Right.
That can and should take place right now.
And it's interesting because like that is kind of what happened for Indiana this year, not intentionally, but the NFL does that on purpose because they want
in order
the teams
to
that are not winning
Indiana
to start winning. Yeah.
Because they want Indiana in the playoff.
Yeah.
They
want everybody engaged.
Turnover. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Which I think is important. I really do.
And here's a realization that Andy helped me make about myself today. But we have been conditioned to.
I can't wait for this. Andy helped you make
Yeah, well, we were on the phone talking about this, and then he hung up on me and thought I got into a car accident.
I was in the gym. I was doing Arnold presses.
He goes, "Are you okay? I just want to make sure that I didn't." That was cute.
Yeah, I hung up on him too.
In my lifetime, both as a fan and then a professional, the national champion of our sport before this year was held to a certain standard, which was excellence, right? Whether that be one loss or undefeated.
I mean,
whether that be.
How many times do we let a non-division champ just like waltz into the 4-team playoff?
Yeah, well, I just mean from a loss standpoint, right?
Well, my thing was
2-loss team won the national title. Is this going to be the first time?
LSU
in
07.
2008.
07.
08 was the date of the game, but 07
Yes.
season. I
This
get
is
that confused a lot.
my first day at Sports
yeah.
Illustrated, actually.
So, like, to me, I just felt like there was a certain standard, like a team had to at least be at in order to be considered for the tournament. Whereas now, under this system, I think you might have 4 or 5 lost teams potentially with how the schedule.
So, Joel, what cynical said was the 2 or 3 teams that either under the table or over the table could pay the best players, could pay the best coaches, could have the gold-plated toilets, would then beat up on 10 inferior opponents and play 2 real games a year. And then they'd win 1 postseason game. And that's it?
But
like that was
lost,
that was how they were trying
It's
to
almost
champion.
not a higher standard because like you can, in
but
particular, in a subjective. Yeah, but
that mattered.
Listen,
it mattered a great deal. If they lost one of the 10
in that system, there is zero incentive to schedule quality games.
Yeah.
Zero. Now, you might argue that that's the case this year. Maybe not. I would just tell you that the more we get into an opportunity where we have a path where we're scheduling for you and you have a defined path to get to the playoff, we're going to get not just like some better games. I'm talking about like mountains of better games in college football. I don't think people quite realize the amount of inventory that we leave on the floor in college football. It's staggering. It is staggering. We get maybe 8 to 10%, maybe, of the games that we should be getting in college football. And mainly because of this model that you're talking about, where it just matters that we schedule Mercer and win.
Yeah.
I'm with you. All right.
Yeah.
Joel,
Andy, sorry, I got to say, I'm sorry. It just, the other point too is that 95% of the sport, if maybe 100% in a few years, is no longer built in a way where it's reasonable to expect them to go 12-0 or 11-1 against their schedule, regardless of who they schedule. So like that is the other part of it too. But the last thing I want to say, and this is just my opinion and my preference, I am kind of afraid of just turning this into the NFL. And Andy always goes, it's the most popular sport in the world. It's like, I get it. I've heard that a million times. But like the charm of college football is aren't you always the one, Andy, that says the best part about college football, the feature, not a bug, is its dysfunction. It's craziness. It's outlandish.
But we can have, you can have dysfunction and craziness as the NFL proves every year.
Order. Yeah, I guess.